One of the themes here is about leadership and continuity of leadership. And one of the risks I think our commission sees for higher education is it's a sector that is besought by too much ad hoc, disruptive, not sustainable change. It's not agenda-driven, it's not focused. To have real change that sticks requires leadership. And Bob, I hope you can speak. There's been no sector that's been more forced to really reevaluate premises for operating than I think the public community college sector, where historically you had an access mission, and there's been a flip to make it not just access but student success. That has to change all the DNA. Tell us a little bit about your perceptions and why boards are important in this conversation.
Well, I think it goes back to the recommendations about boards necessarily raising the question, regardless of the institution, what is our public good that we are serving? You're not just serving the institution for its own sake. And for community colleges, back to Britt's observation that not only is our world economy shifting to a higher skill level, requiring advanced knowledge and skill, but our population is becoming more diverse. And our fastest growing elements of our population are among those who have historically not gone on to college. And the question of public good is raised about what is to become of our society if that trajectory is left unattended by our institutions of higher education. And if we are to attend to it, then it seems that our challenge in the environment that Britt described is that we have to reach larger numbers of underserved populations. And we must have significantly better outcomes than we've experienced so far. And it has to be at a declining cost for families and for the students. And we're not under our current formula, continuing what we've been doing is a recipe for disaster. So among community colleges, as we're witnessing over the next 5 years, the majority of community college presidents transitioning out because of retirement, the critical role of boards in selecting new leaders and then supporting them. And so we need leaders now with new skills, with a new vision, that are focused more on outcomes rather than inputs, more about student completion than student enrollment, more about whether students as a result of their experience are improving their economic circumstances and continuing on and not just going to the university, but completing the university. Those kinds of presidents need a different skill set than the last generation. And yet, based on a recent study by the Aspen Institute, community college boards look for attributes in their new presidents that have always been the historic attributes of fundraising, legislative effectiveness, public relations, and reducing risk when it comes particularly to the financial condition of the institution. When in fact, when we look at the high-performing institutions and their leaders, they are risk takers. They are those that focus on student achievement and completion, that are looking at outcomes and using data to drive decisions rather than history or anecdotal stories. And so we have a mismatch between what it is that our boards are looking for and the leadership requirements for this new reality. And so I come back, it will only be our boards that make this difference, but they've got to be moving, as the report indicates, away from the day-to-day transactional committee reports and onto the question of what is the public good that we're attempting to serve, how do we know by evidence that we're achieving it, and how do we then support leadership over the long term to accomplish those aims. I'd add one more thing that I think might be missing from the report, and that is I don't think that we're going to achieve these substantial changes that we're talking about by institutions and their trustees looking only at the individual institution, but looking across institutions regarding the weaving of a coherent policy for higher education so that the promise of the American dream, no, the imperative of social mobility is assured and not left to chance.
Well said. As you were talking, I was thinking an awful lot of energy goes into public policy solutions for that. Isn't that a public policy responsibility to address cross-institutional articulation? This commission seems to be saying it's got to be owned by the institutions. It's already public policy, but unless the institutions own it, it doesn't happen. Jim Stern, I want to ask you a couple questions, beginning with an awful lot of this dialogue implicitly talks about public purposes, and I think some may hear that as public institutions. The agenda of serving the future and serving the larger society, is that just a public institution problem?
Well, I'm the private guy. No, and it's a major topic on our board, I'm retired, because we do talk about transformational experience first and measure it of the student, and as was said, how we can serve society as a whole. It happens in the case of, again, Tufts, where I came from, to be part of our DNA. So, but it's something just to be brief, we touch on virtually at every board meeting.